Greetings Indie Warriors, welcome back to I Dream of Indie. My name's Old Gamer Joe, and if it's your first time here at the channel, do consider hitting that subscribe button below to help us bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming. We have tons of indie game reviews and previews here. Today we are reviewing Doug Hates His Job on the Nintendo Switch, developed by Super Villain Games. This game is also available on the Xbox platform, and it's priced at $6.99. At the time of this review, the game does have a bit of a discount on the eShop, bringing it down to $4.89 here in North America, so if you are interested, be sure to take advantage of that. In Doug Hates His Job, you'll play as disgruntled employee Doug, who can't stand his boss, his co-workers, he's just generally unhappy at work. The game begins with a dream sequence that isn't so far from reality, where his boss berates him for not doing enough work. When confronted about working over the weekend, Doug finally gets fed up and quits his job. From there, the game turns into a 2D brawler, and unfortunately, not a very good one. The core brawling mechanics of Doug Hates His Job involve using a combination of kicks, punches, and blocks to take down various different enemies in standard brawler fashion. These enemies range from fellow office workers to senior citizens and even a fantasy football junkie. You can execute a drop kick, and of course, you'll also be able to pick up a few restorative items along the way, and some weapons as well, like knives that you can throw at enemies. As enemies group up on you, you'll soon realize, however, just how lackluster the hit detection in Doug Hates His Job can be. More often than not, my punches would sail through my opponents, and the cheap, poorly programmed AI can often gang up on you from all sides, easily depleting your health in no time. If you do get lucky, you'll eventually slug your way to a boss character, like the aforementioned fantasy football Paul, where not only will you have to deal with him, but also some cronies that he'll throw your way as well. As the brainless fool pounded away at me over and over again, forcing me to restart the section, I looked down at my controller and questioned if I was going to be able to survive this review. Finding the burning indie spirit inside, I pushed on, eventually drop-kick spamming the brute to progress forward. For those of you that do manage to complete the first level, you'll realize that Doug Hates His Job does actually switch up its gameplay elements from time to time. Upon the defeat of fantasy football Paul, the game became an overhead racer of sorts where you have to dodge around cars. The slightest tap to any vehicle resulted in me having to start the entire section again, and the shoddy response time of the controls meant doing this quite a few times. This is a theme throughout Doug Hates His Job. It's a game that, to its credit, does switch things up, yes, but never successfully so. Inevitably, it's just right back to the subjectively unfunny story and the lackluster brawling until again you force your way through the game's bad mechanics and are greeted with another disappointing style of gameplay. For example, an annoying stealth section in what inevitably got me to perform my second rage quit of the year, a wave-based battle with fax machines. I like the idea of mixing things up in between the brawler segments, but unfortunately they're just not fun here. Graphically, Doug Hates His Job does feature a very simple low-poly look. It reminded me a bit of Drunken Fist, which we reviewed fairly recently on the channel. I would say while it's nothing special looking, this was probably the game's strongest aspect. The backgrounds have decent variety to them, though unfortunately my frame rate would tank from time to time. I guess spawning multiple fax machines at once was just too much to handle. Still, the look of the game isn't the real issue here, nor is the sound design, which features a halfway decent soundtrack filled with some rockabilly tunes. There's some punchy, slappy bass going on here. The sound effects, though, are pretty uninspired, even if I did get a chuckle out of the many times I heard Doug's scream of death upon being defeated. So overall, the visual and audio design of the game aren't really the issues, they're fairly acceptable. I do admire the ambition and the creativity that went into Doug Hates His Job. I just think the execution falls flat. Each element introduced brought a new set of frustrations with it, so it makes it a tough game to recommend, honestly. So I think I'm gonna have to tell my boss I'm not feeling good and cut out of work a bit early now. Thank you so much for checking out our review of Doug Hates His Job. We now want to take a moment to shout out our great channel members: Mitchell Hall, Kevalo Bunny, Bill Tikaz, Christian Cruz, Wesley William Semple, Kimberly H, Rosie Syntax, and Chris Jackson. You are awesome, Indie Warriors. Thank you for supporting this channel. Everybody else should head down to the description box below where there's a ton of ways you can support us. Thank you so much again for supporting independent content.